Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 3 of our creativity challenge in our Mind, Body, Spirit Tribe for Creative Souls. I have been really enjoying this challenge so far. How about you? Have you been enjoying the challenge? I hope you're getting a lot of interesting ideas, and I hope you're applying the question of the day to what your chosen activity is. At this point, hopefully everybody in this group has an activity that they're exploring. It's not something that you need to make tons of progress on this week. You don't have to perfect your result. You don't have to finish a project or anything. The point isn't so much the result of what you're working on. The point, like the goal of this challenge, is to actually learn more about yourself and your creative process so that you can have more conscious, constructive control, in Alexander's words, over yourself as you create. And if you didn't get my reference, Alexander of the Alexander technique, of which I am a teacher. The Alexander technique is a big part of my whole Art of Freedom method for conscious living and masterful artistry. I utilize the universal principles of the technique and apply those principles and teach my students how to apply those principles to whatever it is that they want to improve or change or find out in their lives. So I'm seeing the comments are starting to come in. Hello, everybody. Hello, Angel and Joe and Esha. Okay, I seem to be getting a similar problem to what I had yesterday, where I'm being told that my volume is low. So I'm going to see what I can to raise my volume, and I'm going to wait a little bit because my students told me today that when I raised the volume, it actually improved. So I don't want to yank out my microphone like I did yesterday, which was a disaster. And I'll wait for you to tell me, anybody, if what I just did improved the sound. I would be very grateful if you could tell me if my sound is now louder than it was when Esha just wrote to me a moment ago. I'm not getting any more comments coming yet, so I'm just going to wait a moment. I don't want you to have to suffer through my terrible sound like yesterday in Katrina's interview. That was a disappointment for me, even though I thought the interview was really fun. And Katrina's sound was great, but the sound was good at the beginning. And then, yeah, I don't know what happened to that. So hopefully what I did now has helped. I'm still not getting okay, Esha says it's the tiniest bit better. Maybe I could come closer. Now, actually, my microphone is right here, so coming closer is not really going to change anything. Okay, I can still go a little bit higher. Now it's at 100%. So this is the best I can do. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do? Because this is like wasted time, I'm going to start over. I'm not going to stop the video, but I'm going to have this video clipped later, and I'm going to take out this intro stuff so that nobody has to go through all this. So I'm going to start my presentation all over again. This is day 3. I'm so delighted that you're all here for day 3 of our 5-day creativity challenge, and I would love to get your feedback and hear how things are going for you. So let me know if the questions are interesting, if they're stimulating your thought process in any way, and what's going on for you. Are you getting more interesting practice sessions, or as you're creating your artwork or writing, are you keeping those questions in the back of the mind? Are you discovering things? I'm getting a lot of interesting comments and discussion on the post of the day with the question. I just love it when you are posting your thoughts and your experiences. Let's keep that up and keep the momentum going through the week. And for me, on my end, it actually keeps getting more and more interesting as we go through the week, which is hard to do because yesterday's interview with Katrina I thought was very interesting. But tomorrow is a topic very close to my heart. It is on spirit. And then on Friday, as you know, I have my first ever creative healing event, doing it virtually, of course, and you're all invited. If you're signed up, you will get the Zoom invitation for that. And okay, so I'm seeing, hello, Kathy is here. Good. I'm glad the sounds better for you. And Esha, and Michael says the quality is very good, but the sound is a little low. Okay, there is just nothing I can do about my volume. So I think that's the best I'm going to be able to do. I apologize. I don't know what else I can do. So this is just the way it's going to be. Oh, I wonder if that is something over there. No, that's visual. Okay. I'm learning a new system, but I think I've learned what there is. I wonder if the echo cancellation might be causing something. If you're okay, I'm going to turn off the echo cancellation and see if that changes. I just turned off echo cancellation. If that makes a difference, I would really love to know from all of you if anything just changed because I turned that off. And I won't get your feedback right away, but I'll wait. I'll keep talking. Today's presentation is about the body, and the question is, what happens? What happens to the body when we are creating? And thank you, Lino, for the feedback. Then. Okay, so what happens to the body when we create? Huge question, right? Okay, I want to first start by talking about what I mean by create. What do I mean by creating? What do we all mean? I'm asking you, what do you think this means? What does creating mean? When I think of what the creative act is for me personally, and what I think it is, the way I believe it works for us as human beings, is that we get an idea. The idea might be from outside. It might be, for instance, Mozart's little black dots on a piece of paper. Or it could be maybe it's some idea floating around in the universal consciousness of our country. A lot of that going on these days. Right, so we might get an idea from outside, or of course, there may be a self-generated idea from memory, from past experiences, or from who knows what. It may be an idea pops into your head. Ultimately, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It could come from outside of us, from within us. But once we have it, the idea is definitely within us. And at that point, it's in the brain and it's a thought. Once you're aware of an idea that you have, it is then a thought. And a thought is not abstract. A thought is not just mental. A thought is actually a physical thing. A thought is neurons in our brain firing and wiring together into a sequence. So you can have these lofty abstract ideas about philosophizing about whatever, but when you're thinking, it's neurons wiring and firing together, electrical impulses, chemical connections, cells, right? Things are lighting up in there, okay? And often those ideas are things that have to do with an action. You know, maybe you have the idea of inventing a spaceship, but you're probably not going to act on that idea. So it stays up here and probably doesn't go very far. If you're like me, if I think of, wow, I could build a spaceship someday, probably it could end up in a drawing or a painting or something, but it certainly wouldn't turn into a spaceship if it were me. So that is a very limited idea. I'm not going to feed it. It actually doesn't even really interest me. The idea came from somewhere now as I was talking. And as soon as I had the idea of building a spaceship, it's like, okay, not interested, goodbye. And as soon as I stop talking about it, the idea is going to be gone, right? I'm not feeding it. I'm not growing it. But if we want to produce something, and we're all creative people here in this group, if you want to produce something, so I'm a musician, let's say I want to improvise something. That's what I'm going to do for you tomorrow. I'm going to take in ideas from all of you who are there tomorrow for the creative healing event. As an example, you're going to give me ideas. And so they come from outside, and then they're going to mingle with ideas of my own. And I'm not going to stop those ideas from continuing. So they're going to be neurons that fire and wire together, and they're going to I'm going to allow them free passage through my brain, from my mind, through the nervous system. And my job as the artist is to allow the passage of that idea to come through me, from the idea, from my mind, through the physical brain, through the nervous system, which passes through my physical body. And the nervous system stimulates muscles. Here's where we get to the body part. It stimulates muscles to contract and release and move in response to what I want to create with my violin, to allow my fingers, well, first to allow my neck and my body, my arm, my wrist, my fingers, to allow my body to move, to produce, to manifest the idea into reality so that it can go out of me through sound, through self-expression. So you may not be a musician, but it doesn't matter what the medium is, we are all creators. Whether you're an artist or not, we are all creating because we're taking an idea and we're manifesting it out into reality. To me, that is the creative process. So all human beings have that privilege. We are involved in that creative act. So in this group, we're doing it specifically because we all have a chosen activity that we chose the first day of this challenge, and we were going to explore the daily topic in relation to that activity every day. So today we're going to explore what is the body's role, and what do we do with the body, and how do we use the body? What happens to the body when we're engaged in this process of taking an idea and manifesting it out into the world? That's self-expression. So before I talk any more about that, I'm going to hop over to the comments because I'm seeing some answers here to my question about what is creation. Esha Nayogi, hello. Esha says, creating is making something that wasn't there before. I'm undecided if it's still creative if you make something completely on someone else's pattern. It probably still is. I'll give you my quick thought on that. I think that everything that we do is creative, but it's more or less consciously creative. And as we talked about, I think it was yesterday, it came up with Katrina, and then I think I also talked about how there's always going to be a limitation. There's always a structure. That's just the world we live in. That's the definition of being in this body, right? Or when you're a classical musician and you're playing Mozart or Bach or something, you have a very, very clear structure and framework. You have a scale system, and you don't play quarter tones if you're playing Western classical music, unless you're kind of bending things to make them juicy. But there's a very clear framework, and you know exactly what notes to play with what dynamics, and within that very rigid, relatively rigid structure, you can still be so creative within that structure. So being an artist is exploring your freedom to create something within the framework that you've been given. For instance, if you have two notes, you have an A and a B, and you're going to play two quarter notes, A and B. You know you're going to play those, but the quality of that A and the quality of that B, you have like infinite freedom to, even if it says play that A forte, the quality of a forte A quarter note is going to be, you're going to have 50 different A's if you have 50 different people playing that A. Because the thing is, here's the juicy bit. What you produce reflects who you are. What you produce reflects who you are. Like it or not, there is no escaping it. What you put out there, the effect, is directly related to the cause, and you are at cause, so to speak. And most of the time we're not aware of this, but every single thought we have has an effect. First in ourselves, in the body, and secondarily out in the world, right? And what else here? So Esha, yes. Those are my thoughts on that. So I'm curious if that makes sense to anybody else, and to you, Esha. Lena, oh, I love these quotes. So you know what? I'm gonna like copy those all and put them on little social media posts, like quote myself. Actually, I probably will do it. I have to like not be attached to any of that, like not let that go to my head. But if it's true, it's true. And if I think it's true, it's true. And if I said it, right? So a thought is neurons firing in our brain in a sequence. And anyway, that's not even, it's like I didn't create that. That's just a fact. And the creative process, the body manifesting an idea and bringing it into reality. Yeah, I believe that. I really do. Kathy says, creation for me is a process when I am most present, similar to meditation and prayer. It can be a zone. Yes. Yes. And I'm going to talk a little more about this, exactly this, Kathy. I'm so glad you're on the same wavelength with me. Same wavelength. Esha says, I like your idea. Good. Jane says, that's scary. What's scary? Tell me more about that. I'm curious. Jane, tell me more about what's scary. Okay, good. So I feel like we're all kind of on the same page here, making sense. Okay. So I want to talk about a little more about the goal. And this is along the lines of what Kathy just said. I'm going to read that again. Oh, I just remembered I can do this. Isn't that cool? Kathy says, creation for me is a process when I am most present, similar to meditation and prayer. It can be a zone. Okay, so how do we access that? And I'm going to talk a little more about what I think that is and how it works. And that's what this creativity challenge is about. It's about learning how to access and turn on that creative spark so that we can consistently engage in that process of creation with consciousness. Okay, so I feel like the goal is to have a free channel. Okay, so you have an idea. Remember, there's this idea, then it's in the brain. It's in the mind first, and the mind, of course, has no location. I forgot to say that earlier. Of course, there's an idea. There's a universal mind, then there's the personal mind, and then it becomes physical once it's in the brain, and it's the neurons firing and wiring together. So once it's in here, it has to get from here out into the world. And the body is the conveyor channel, right? We need the body to be able to take those ideas and take them and manifest them into something real out there in the physical universe. Okay, so let's say you want to make a painting. Kathy is a painter, among other things. So let's say you want to make a painting. You have the ideas, they're swirling around here. You need to be able to get the ideas through the body, like I said before, out the arms so that you can paint, right? And you want what you're painting to reflect the idea as truthfully as possible, okay? So our job is to get out of the way, to allow the idea, free transmission, like free reign. Let that idea through without getting in the way of it. Easier said than done, because our thoughts keep getting in the way. And a thought is never just a thought, like I told you. It's not mental and abstract. As soon as you think it, it is physical. For every thought you have, there is a physical component to that thought in the body. So let's say, I'm not talking about Kafka anymore, but let's say you're a painter and you have this beautiful image in your mind, or you have something that you know you want to create, and you can just taste it. It's like you can see it, right, in your mind. Or if you're a musician, you can hear the sound you want to produce up here. You have an idea, and of course, a whole other conversation is clarifying your idea and your vision. Very, very, very important process. But let's say you have a really clear idea and a clear vision, and you start to create, and right after you start, you think, oh God, but I'm never going to be able to do this. Well, what happens to your body when you think, I'm never going to be able to do this? You see what just happened to me is like, I'm never going to be able to do this. Is going to be so hard. I have this big vision. It's a mural. It's huge, and it has all these really delicious colors, but oh, I don't have those colors, and they're too expensive. I can't buy those things. How could I ever? Oh, and a mural that big? Oh, I'm never going to be able to do that. Okay, so what happens? You've already cut off the idea as soon as it started to leave your brain, and it's just not going to happen. Or let's say you're in the middle of a performance and you're up on stage and you want to play that Bach minuet that you've been practicing for the last 3 months or 6 months or a year or 5 days, whatever. You've been practicing it and you can do it at home. Then you get on stage and all of a sudden you see all those people. It's like, oh, what are they going to think? So the mind starts interfering with fear and self-doubt. And those are very intimately connected. Maybe they're not even different. Fear and self-doubt. I call them the doubt monsters. Your mind starts to interfere. And what happens to the body when you do that? The body responds to that. If you're thinking fearful thoughts, your body is going to want to protect you. So it's going to go like this because something's scary out there and it's threatening my survival. And this is not even really conscious most of the time. Most of the time it's under the surface layer of our consciousness, and it can even be an animal instinctual response in the reptilian brain. It's not even your thinking prefrontal cortex. It's deeper in the brain. It's a visceral response. If you think about being on stage, by the way, if you have any performance anxiety, who here thinks it's natural to get up on a stage under bright lights where everybody can see you and you're at the center of attention and you have potentially hundreds of people out there in the dark looking at you? Now, is that a very natural human experience? No. And if you were an animal, how would you feel if you were up there on the center of the stage with the spotlights on you and hundreds of eyes looking at you? You'd probably oh my God, this is not safe. I don't know who's out there, and predators may be about to jump on me to eat me. So again, topic for another conversation, but performance anxiety kind of makes sense. But we have free will, so we get to choose how to think in response to situations. You get to choose. The art of freedom, right? You're free. You're free to think differently to get different results in your body. All right? So let me pause for a moment. And yes, Angel, fight, flight, freeze, right? Yeah, absolutely. Michael, hey, Michael. Michael says creating is beyond the mind, an awareness that is not linear or based in thought. Creating is not time-bound, and it's an action that manifests through the material body. Right. The act of creation it just happens. It's not linear, but as soon as we are involved in it, the physical body is part of the process, and then it becomes time-bound. It's the way I see it anyway. But yeah, what else is coming up here? Oh, Jane answered my question here. Jane says, I would like structure because I knew it. I like structure because I know it would give me a free channel, and it's scary because I know I usually don't have it, so it reflects all of my blocks. Okay, so I think this is a bit what I'm talking about here, where you start to think a certain way, fearful thoughts, and those are reflected in the body getting tight. Okay, so as soon as you have that doubtful, fearful thought, the body reflects it with excess tension. When there's excess tension that's not called for, it's not appropriate tension. There's nothing wrong with tension in itself. I'm just going to say that really clearly. Tension is not bad. In fact, we need tension or we would be a puddle on the floor. We need tension, but we need appropriate tension that is appropriate for the task at hand. And 99% of the time, there is extra tension that's not necessary. It's not appropriate for the task at hand. And so then that excess tension starts to close in on that channel, blocks the channel, and then the idea can't pass through the body as freely. And then what we produce is slightly distorted. It's not a real, true reflection of the idea, right? So another way to think about this, I was just talking about this with my class earlier, my Alexander Musicians group class. I was talking about how we talked about the goal. We know what we want. Free, spontaneous, beautiful creation that reflects the idea truthfully, so that it really is what you intended, okay, what you've produced. You need to have a free channel from brain to artistic creation or whatever you're making out there. And it's always relative. It's never going to be perfectly free, 100% free, because we're human. But we strive for that, to keep getting ourselves out of the way as much as possible. And by the way, those fearful negative thoughts, those are ego. That's always ego. It always comes down to the ego and the identification with your personality. That's what limits things for us. So if you have incredibly huge, limitless, gorgeous, beautiful, divine ideas and you want them to come through your system to manifest those, there's always going to be some kind of interference because it's human, but our job is to keep peeling away those layers over time, usually is a lifetime, I think, to keep practicing undoing the stuff that gets in the way so you're not entertaining the fearful, doubtful ego thoughts. And they come in and they leave. Because they will come, but you don't pay any attention, then they leave. And you are focused on the idea, getting out of the way and trusting and allowing the idea to come through. Does this make sense? So what we all want, I think, is that effortless process. It's full of grace. It's graceful. It's effortless and free because that is the nature of that divine idea, so to speak, that comes to us. That's free of ego and personality. I don't like to say actually that it's free of personality, but that's maybe a little too much nuance for here. And you could say, well, there's always the personality, and that can be a really good thing. It's what you do with it. It's what you do with the sense of person. If you're attached to the personality or you identify with it, like you're making that the priority as opposed to the bigger personality with a capital P. Again, now I'm getting into risky territory because the words get in the way. So my job is to now say, it doesn't matter. What's clear is there's an idea. It needs to come through your thinking, your mind, body, self. And the clearer it is, with the less blockages, the less excess tension, the more true the production is. Does this make sense? I'm going to hop over to the comments here. Hello, Patricia. Lino is quoting me again. It really tickles me. Okay, so I think this is making sense to everybody here. I'm wondering if you have questions, or let's see, I gave some examples of when you get in the way, when you think the fearful, doubtful thoughts, and how that can sort of mess up what you're creating. Oh yes, I also wanted to talk about how you want to have, okay, let me backtrack. Here's another thing I wanted to bring up. So when the channel is blocked, and let's say, oh, I want to play Mozart today, because you can also block yourself with passionate, excited thinking too. That's a really important point, actually, because I talked about fear and doubt. Those are always underlying everything, but they are very easy to miss when you're getting attached to being excited and enthusiastic about something. But you see what happens to my body when I'm excited and enthusiastic? I am blocking everything. And if I play my violin like this, I can be so passionately engaged and involved in what I'm doing, and I'm going to feel so into it. I'm telling you, I know how to do this. I'm very good at that. I can get really emotionally and deeply involved in what I'm doing so that it's just, oh, it feels so emotionally intense and like this is what I'm really meant to do. But the actual product is full of tension. You can see it in my body when I display it, right? But it comes through the sound, because remember, I said before, what you produce out there, like it or not, conscious or not, it reflects who you are in the moment that you're producing it. So the tension is going to come through. The tension is going to come through, and it's going to interfere not only with the quality of my sound when I'm speaking and playing, but it's also, yeah, Angela says, that looks painful. Yeah, down the road, I would, if I played like that all the time, you bet I would have tendonitis, carpal tunnel, back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, and then I'd wonder why, because I love playing my instrument, right? But it's that emotional excitement that actually causes tension in the body. And paradoxically, it feels really expressive, but it's actually blocking the true expression. Because the true feelings, the true qualities, the qualities that you want to transmit, the character qualities that you want to transmit, this is like for actors as well. It's like you have character qualities that can be conveyed through your art, but they're not the real thing if you're blocking it with that tension. You want to have the qualities here, and then you get out of the way and the quality comes through. And you know, if you think of archetypes, for instance, there's an archetype of anger that's not a passionate, emotional anger, but this like volcanic, natural power. You need to be able to make art that reflects that just as much as something beautiful and gentle. There is an energy that you're transmitting when you're creating. And to be able to transmit whatever qualities, universal, divine qualities, it's energy. You need to be able to get your little self out of the way so that those big things can come through the music or the painting or the writing, whatever. And it's not about little personality. It's not about me feeling like I'm being emotionally engaged. It's not about feeling at all. You're going to feel anyway, but you can't try to force the feeling. I hope this is making sense. It's kind of maybe a very different way of thinking about producing art than some of you are used to. But this is my experience. This is what can happen. This is what's possible. And I'm not even remotely saying that I can do this perfectly, like very far from it. But I do have glimpses of being able to do this, and I know how to make it more likely that I can do this more often. Patricia says, yes, so good. With me. Jane says, how do you think technique and mindset interact? It's difficult without a good technique. Yeah, great question. Technique is also about structure, but it's about coordination. Let's talk about coordination. Let's say, for example, I'm going to use the music analogy because that's what I know best, but it's the same. I have no doubt it's the same for any artistic discipline. You have something you want to create and you have a framework. So let's say I want to play a scale and I want to play it with a certain quality of bow stroke and I want it to have a certain volume. So I can get really specific about how I want to play that scale. I can hone it down and specify what I want. So it's my idea, my vision, my auditory pre-hearing. The idea in my mind can be so clear that I know exactly what I want. Problem most of us have is that then, after we have the idea and we know what we want, we try to make it happen. It's a question for everybody. What happens when you try to make that happen? What happens? What happens to you? What happens to your body? Today's question. What happens to your body? And by the way, you can't really separate the body from the mind, but you can emphasize one or the other, even though they're not different. So today we're just emphasizing body, but you see I've been talking just as much about the mind. Okay, so body. What happens to your body when you have an idea, you have a really, really clear idea, and then you try to produce it? Usually what happens when you start trying, here's what Angel says. You get focused on it and your body tightens up. Yeah. Esha says, tension happens. That's right. And Jane says, I feel with my voice, it's like having glue on a paintbrush, which stops me doing what I want and feel. Yeah. Okay. So this is what happens when we start interfering by trying to make it happen. This is wanting to have control over the outcome. So what's the solution for that? It's I'm laughing because most of us think that actually, try again is what we're supposed to do, but no, it's the opposite. Our job is just to entertain the idea and then have faith in the process of creation that I've been describing. And that includes faith in the system, the mind, body, soul, spirit system that conveys the idea and manifests it. We must have faith. You must have faith, and you have to get out of the way and have patience and allow it to happen. And then the way to do that, I mean, anybody can do this. This is natural, but it's not what most people do. It's a very conscious process. And it's what is taught in the Alexander technique, but it's not unique to the Alexander technique. It's been around forever. For as long as human beings have been wanting to produce things, they've had ideas and they've had to use the body-mind to convey the idea. Okay, so there are a lot of systems out there that help you do this, but I've never come across a better one to make it explicit what we're doing with the mind-body self. I've never come across a simpler, more effective way to do it than Primal Alexander, which is the Alexander technique, but taught hands-free, which is what I teach my students. Again, it's what's taught in the Alexander technique traditionally. It's what Alexander did for himself to solve his performance issues. He didn't touch himself with his hands. He didn't do anything to himself. He figured out how the human mind-body system works to produce sound with his voice. That's what he was interested in producing. He figured it out. He figured out that he needed to think differently. He needed to get out of the way of his thoughts. He needed to have a clear goal. He needed to get out of the way and trust the process and continue the process. Of course, it's much, there are a lot more details in there, but it's actually a very, very, very simple thing. And you can start practicing this process with a cycle. This is the etude, the awareness etude, Primal Alexander etude that I teach my students every single day. And I do it live on my personal Facebook timeline, which is public and open to anybody. Every day at 11:30, I'm teaching the cycle. But it's only the first step. It's the first step because, and it's only the first step because it doesn't teach you, doesn't show you how to take yourself into movement and how to take the next steps to actually create. Because movement, when you're creating something, there must be movement, right? You can't create anything just by sitting in meditation for, an hour or whatever. That's part of the creative process for sure, but it doesn't actually take it into making the painting, right? It's missing the subsequent steps, right? So the cycle is absolutely wonderful. It's a very, very wonderful foundation to start from, and it employs constructive thinking, which is the key to start clearing yourself out of the way. But then there's more. You need to know how to allow that idea to come through the body into movement. And that's where the awareness etudes that come after the cycle teach you how to do that. If you want to know more about that, just ask me. Okay? Just message me, email me. You know how to find me. Okay? All right. I think that's probably all I wanted to talk about today, but I'm going to hop over to oh no, it's not the only thing I wanted to talk about. Before I go back to the comments, in case you need to go, anybody, just wanted to remind you about how you can keep this simple. These ideas, there are a lot of big ideas here, but make it simple, make it practical. So hopefully you're all getting the email that goes with each day where I give you a simple question. That's on the daily post in the Facebook group too. Simple question. Today's question is, what happens to your body when you create? Start with self-observation. You always have to start there. What am I actually noticing right now? That brings you back to the present moment. What's happening to me as I speak right now? What's happening to you as you sit right now? What happens to you as you're listening right now? When you're engaging in your creative activity of choice today for this challenge, just observe yourself. Just find out. Ask yourself, what do I notice about myself as I am engaged in this activity? What's happening to my body? Find out and keep asking the question. Don't just ask it once, because you're going to get more and more and more information the more curious you are and the more you ask the question. Just find out what happens to me now. It's going to be different from what happens to you in 5 minutes. Find out what your habits are. Observe yourself and find out. What happens to my body when I paint? What happens to my body when I paint with blue with that little paintbrush? What happens to my body when I move the canvas from here to there? What happens to my body when I go over to my violin to grab it? What happens to my body when I lift my violin? What happens to my body when I bring the harp towards me? That's for Angèle, our harpist. What happens? Find out. This is your job for today. Keep it really, really simple, because it is really simple. Okay? And tomorrow we're going to talk about spirit, which is something that I've never really talked about in the same terms I'm going to talk about tomorrow, which that's where I start to interfere and going into self-doubt. Should I expose this or not? So anyway, I already made the recording, so. Tomorrow we have a live interview with Diana Stellan, painter extraordinaire. And it's going to be a really fun interview. And Hopefully my sound will be better because I'm going to leave the microphone in and it's going to be like this. I'm not going to touch that thing tomorrow. So hopefully it's going to work out. So that's live tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. I hope you can all make it and support Diana and learn from her. She has some amazing ideas and things to show us, I'm sure. So, and then the spirit portion of tomorrow's challenge is, I recorded it yesterday, so I know what it is. I've never ever shared what's in that video before, and I'm scared to put it out there, but I like a real challenge, and I know when I feel like this, it's like, gotta do it. Yeah, Kathy? Yep, Kathy says, wait, ooh, I just lost it. Kathy says, go for spirit tomorrow. Okay, I will. I've got you helping me, supporting me here, right? Lena says, hooray for the microphone. Yesterday, I felt so bad. It was really distracting for Katrina at the beginning, and I'm sure it was distracting for everybody else all the way through as well. And did the best I could, but I have a feeling I've worked it out with the help of my students today in class. And if the sound right now is good, this is how it's going to be tomorrow because I'm not touching it. Okay, Lena says, being self-aware of what the body is doing is the key first step to directing the body to do something else more freely. Yeah. And personally, I would say it differently. I wouldn't say directing the body. I would want the body to be allowed to be directed. Yeah, it's a subtle difference, but I don't feel like I'm doing the directing. It's a really different way of thinking about it. We can talk about it another time if you're curious. But yeah, really, it's a subtle little difference there. But yeah, somebody is telling me the sound is good right now. I'm very happy to hear that. I can't see who it is, sorry, or I would call you out. Yeah, with the new system, if you want your name to show up so that I can know who you are and interact with you, then it's like at the beginning, I think, or at some point you have to click. Some people, not everybody has to do it, to click to be visible through the system. I don't know, whatever. I can see some of you and I can't see some of you. It's just the way it is. And what else? Okay. Yeah, I love it. Your comments are all great. Wonderful. Patricia says, not wanting to have control. That is the key. Yeah, the paradoxical thing that is reassuring maybe for us control freaks is that we can want to have control, but we have to understand that real, true, conscious, constructive control doesn't happen here. It's not where we think it happens. It's something much, much, infinitely bigger than that. So yes, I feel that there is so much more control when I play the violin. This is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I am going to finish because I could just talk on this subject forever. I guess you can tell. Forgive me if I talk too much, but my mind just goes. So Alexander he said something that mystified me for a long time until just last year, a couple years ago, I think it was. He used to talk about his method being about quickening the conscious mind. And I was like, what the heck is that? What does that mean? Quickening the conscious mind. Isn't my mind fast enough? And I thought, well, maybe he's not talking about speed. Because in our Alexander training course for 3 years, we did everything so slowly. So it didn't make sense to me that to quicken the conscious mind had to do with speed. But I'm telling you, a couple years ago or whenever it was that it hit me, maybe it was just last year, I don't know, it was not that long ago, suddenly I had the experience while I was playing my violin where somehow something happened and it's like time expanded. I was playing a really fast technical passage on my violin. Fast fingers. Usually I would think of that as one thing with maybe 10, 20 notes in it, but I would think of the big picture of that passage and play the whole thing like one thing. In that instant, it's like everything kind of warped, like time warped and slowed down somehow so that I was conscious and present with every single note I played. It was super fast, but I was there. And then I realized, oh, that's what Alexander meant by quickening the conscious mind. Yeah, my mind is a heck of a lot faster because it was able to stay with what I was doing at lightning speed. It was so fast, but I was there. And when you are present to the note that you're playing on, even when it's super fast, when you're right there, you have control over what happens next. It's very weird. It's paradoxical. When you get out of the way and you give up the kind of control that we're used to, which involves tension and controlling things and making them happen and trying hard, when you give that all up and you do your constructive thinking, you get out of the way and you get out of the way and you do your constructive thinking, your mind works better and it does speed up. Go figure. Anyway, I was delighted when that finally made sense for me, and it just happened one day. Like I couldn't try to make that happen. There was a comment that just popped up. Esha says, the quick and the dead. Quickening can mean coming alive. Yeah, you know, I love that you said that because actually that's kind of how I thought. I kind of thought that's what he meant. Like I took it as an analogy or allegory, or like having a different meaning, nothing to do with speed. And I agree with you. I think that is definitely a part of it. I think that's a big part of it because you are coming more to life. It's more lively, but it's because your mind is actually working faster. But remember I said time slowed down. So it's like the whole system is able to have a different relationship with time. And I think it has something, it's related to what Michael said earlier today about things being vertical, not linear. Creation being vertical. Yeah. Interesting. Lots of food for thought, right? Okay. Oh, Kathy says, isn't that trust? Yeah. That's that faith that I said is essential. You have an idea and then you have to get out of the way and have faith in the system and in that spirit coming through, however you want to define spirit, that divine idea or mundane idea, however you want to think about it. I don't care about the words. I really don't, as long as we're on the same page with as far as the meaning underneath. Okay, so yeah, faith, trust. I think they're not exactly the same thing, but very, it's like mind and body. It's like you can't separate faith and trust, right? Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think that's enough for today, don't you? Thank you so much for staying with me, those of you who are here. And thank you for watching the replay if you're watching later. This is going to be up in the units section. I hope you're all finding the units. I had never used the units feature in the Facebook groups before until this challenge, and I'm finding they are very useful to keep posts organized. So I hope that you're being able to navigate between units and discussion, that is clear for all of you. It's a nice feature. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye and just urge you to sign up if you haven't yet, because if you don't sign up for the challenge, you cannot come to my amazing creative healing event that's going to happen on Friday, which I'm nervous about but excited about, and I can't wait. So I want you to be there, and because we're going to find out what happens. I've never done it before. It's like the ultimate creative experience for me. So I want you to be there so I can share it with you. It's free this time. It's not going to be free after that, most likely. So I want you to come. Bring friends, bring whoever you want. It's going to be on Zoom, which is why you must sign up so I can send you the Zoom link so that I can see you on Friday. It's not just about you seeing me. It's going to be interactive. And there's going to be a worksheet that I'm going to send out to you probably on Thursday evening so that you can think ahead and prepare a bit for the healing session on Friday. And I'm really excited to find out what it's like. So I hope you are too. And thank you again for being here. And I'll see you for Diana's interview tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And I give you, remember the question and keep it in mind today, and share your comments, please, on the question post. I love it when you're sharing your comments in the group. Please put stuff in the group, post things, comment on the question post. Of course, there's no obligation, but it's so inspiring for everybody when you show up and you give of your experience. So thank you for that in advance, and thanks for what you've already been doing in the group. Lots of love. See you later. Bye.